Good morning. I am Steve. This is my Rock and Metal Life. And today we're up on a pretty good on this date. It's one of the really important ones from my early days of going to concerts. And it is actually the third concert I ever went to. And as you can see, this would be Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And this was a show I saw in Fresno, California when I was still in high school. The date was May 21st, 1981. And tickets still looked cool like this back then. She had the little black hearts on the logo part, I guess you would say, for the name of who's coming. And this was a general admission show. It was at the Warnors Theater, which was it's a pretty ornate theater with a orchestra pit and all that, balcony, and pretty intricately designed. It's a place for plays and things like that. But there's quite a bit of music concerts that go on there. I've seen a bunch of different bands there. And Joan Jett came riding in to this place, which I think probably seats about 1,500 people. Once again, I'm really prepared for this. But, 1,000 people, something like that. Anyway, she comes rolling in just about the time that I Love Rock and Roll goes to number one. And she was like out of nowhere to me. I knew almost nothing about the Runaways at the time, and I still to this day, I've never really gotten into that band. I recognize their place in history, and very familiar with Joan Jett, Lita Ford, everything they did after the breakup of the Runaways, and they went out on their own. But Joan Jett was one for me. She was kind of in the new wave of bands. After I started listening to hard rock and heavy metal, we had all these established bands, and the newer ones were Boston, Foreigner, Van Halen, people like that. And Joan Jett came along. She wasn't Led Zeppelin. She wasn't the Stones in that group. She wasn't in the Van Halen wave, for me. This record here pretty much, that established her, and I was all over it. I dug it because I kind of liked the punkish groove to it. I liked the 50s groove to it. I liked that it was, it's guitar music. It's a guitar band, and I really liked her voice, and I liked her, how do you say it? She was, very much a female vocalist, female guitar player, not cheesecake, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I thought she was extremely attractive. I really liked just her whole persona. Like, she takes the bull by the horn. She's straight ahead rock and roll. Don't have to worry about, this is a woman playing rock or anything like that. She wasn't up there just to be. She wasn't like the Go-Go's or something like that. She wasn't like she wasn't like anything really even hard. I don't know. I just can't really describe her in tune with the Pat Benatar and all the other ones that were out there. She was fronting a guitar band, pretty hard rock, pretty heavy rock. She did ballads. She did ballads in the 50s sense of ballads. To me, just a really unique. Nothing like her out there at that time, unless you went into the true punk, which I really didn't know any of what was going on the punk side of the equation there. Punk in all its glory, the big splash came along when I wasn't looking over there. It was still ongoing when I first got into music. But I never went down that road. It wasn't on my radio, so on and so forth. So anyway, Joan Jett, pretty unique. Had a pretty good career. That this really just kick-started it. And the first record, this is the order I bought these in. I bought this, and I do believe this is Columbia Record Club right here. And I went back and got Bad Reputation, and on I Love Rock and Roll, for me, the title song I always loved, and I love it today. I never really cared for Crimson and Clover. I get that it's a really good remake of that song. The song doesn't really do it for me. I really liked I'm Gonna Run Away, Love is Pain, okay, Nag. I really liked that. Victim of Circumstance. That was probably my favorite song on here at the time. And then Bits and Pieces and Be Straight. I like the energy of those songs. That's a little different than, I Love Rock and Roll or Victim of Circumstance. And then You're Too Possessive. If Victim of Circumstance wasn't my favorite at the time, then You're Too Possessive probably was. And then Oh Woe Is Me is good. And then I honestly don't remember, but I believe I had the cassette, and it's not here today. And I had one that had the little drummer boy on it, and it's not on here, and so that leads me to believe it was on cassette. But anyway, like many of my cassettes, I bet you it's out there, but I'll bet you the top part of the case is here, and the bottom part of the case is over there, and then if I look at another container, I'll have the cassette, and it may or may not play. Anyway, that was the tour I saw her on, was I Love Rock and Roll. Like I said, the song had just gone number one, or maybe it was the record that went number one. I researched this a while back, and it was like I couldn't find it quickly. But anyway, she was riding high when she came here. A band called Still Breeze opened for them, and they had a minor hit, and they were okay. But she was the main attraction, and she was a really big deal. I saw her a bunch of times subsequently. She came out with this next record called Album, which I thought was really good. It's got Fake Friends on there. It also has Coney Island Whitefish, Had Enough. The French Song, I think, was a single. And then she came out with Glorious Results of a Misspent Youth. And I don't remember if this was next or not, but she had a record called Good Music, and Glorious Results and Good Music didn't do so good. And then she burst back on the scene late in the 80s with this thing, and it's got the song that went on to be the football song, I Hate Myself for Loving You. And then she came out with a really good covers record called The Hit List. It's got some stuff on here I really, really like. Oh yeah, you know what? I do have Good Music. So these, one of these has Cherry Bomb on it, which I think it's Glorious Results. So Cherry Bomb is from the Runaways days, and then Good Music. There was a single for that, didn't do real well. Roadrunner's on here, and well, I'm not gonna say anything because we're talking good about Joan, but there's something on here that I really didn't care for. Anyway, so good career for her, and I've followed along pretty much most of the way. She's always been one of those bands that I always think about, the show that I'm going to talk about, and I think about that was one of the first bands that wasn't already established when she came along and made it big. Kind of like, it's mine. This is one of my bands. This isn't a legacy act like Aerosmith or Styx or somebody like that. And again, I know, and I knew at the time that she was with the Runaways, and they had success, and they'd been everywhere. But I missed all that, and I couldn't really sit here right now and speak too intelligently about the Runaways. I just don't know that much about them. But yeah, Joan Jett, big fan of hers. I saw her. This was the first time I saw her, and then July 9th, 1983, I had just graduated high school, and I was about a month away from joining the military, and they had a big stadium show in Fresno, and Loverboy was the headliner, and Joan Jett was next behind them, and The Fix was doing really good with Reach the Beach at the time, and they were on the bill, and the openers was a band called the Red Rockers. They had a minor hit that was called China, and I never heard of them again after that. Then I did join the military in August, and I went to boot camp, and I went to a school, and in December of 1983, I was sent to Orlando, Florida, and I flew to Orlando, and I got there whenever I got there. I got there at night, and I had to take a taxi cab to the base, And I, in the taxi cab, I heard a commercial for uh, a concert that was in Orlando like 2 nights later. This is on December 26th was when I flew to Orlando, Florida. And on the radio, on the rock station, they had a commercial for 38 Special and Joan Jett on December 28th, 1983. And I went, and I went by myself. And my, it was, it's kind of funny that the people I went to my schools with when I first joined the military, we did boot camp and we did a couple months of schools, and that's where you met the people that were, going through the same schooling as you, and we all transferred down there, and we all showed up on different dates, and so I hadn't run into anybody yet uh, from that I knew from up there, and I knew they were coming, and I knew they would be here sooner or later, but I bought a ticket and I rode a taxi to that show and got another one back to the base afterwards. So I saw her, 3 times in a pretty short period of time. And then it was after I was out of the military. She played when I moved back up to the Fresno area. She played at the Fresno Fairgrounds. Her headlining, and that was a good show. It's always a good show when you see her. And I do believe that's it. I saw her those 4 times. I don't think I've seen her since. She's been on some package shows and stuff, and I haven't really seen any of them. But on to the show. This one was the first of a few that I went to with one of my good friends in high school. And the Fresno was roughly an hour away from where I lived and went to high school. And so, whenever there was concerts, okay, do I got the money? That was, item number one. Item number two, okay, if it's on a Tuesday night or something like that, it's going to be uh, difficult because you're going to, once the show's over, there's an hour drive back home, got to be at school the next day. This one was on a Friday. This one worked out really well. And then how are we going to get to Fresno? Because I never had a driver's license in high school, and in fact, I only passed my driver's test like right after I graduated high school. I got it in the mail the day before I headed off to boot camp. So anyway, it was always this big, can we get there? Can we pay for it? On and on and on. And this one it all lined up. It worked out. A buddy of mine, we drove up there, and we went to this place, the Warnors Theater. Never been to it before. My other 2 concerts I had been to were Van Halen in 1981 and Ozzy Osbourne in January of '82. So this is my first one in the smaller theater venue, and it's the first one where the crowd isn't the, you know, traditional heavy metal crowd, I guess, or hard rock crowd. This isn't necessarily the Led Zeppelin, Kiss, Blue Oyster Cult, Ted Nugent people. There were some very punk influenced people. There were a younger crowd, for sure, which is kind of strange. You think in like 81 Van Halen, that's not an older crowd. Well, it's not really, but it really did stand out to me that there were people my age and younger, pretty well represented at this show. Um, Joan Jett watched the opening band Steel Breeze. She watched it from the side of the stage, and this was like a GA show. Even though it's a theater with seats, it was general admission, and we got there early enough to where we sat up pretty close up front. And when the opening band was playing, I could see her standing just off to the side. She watched the whole set, I believe, and that was pretty cool. I thought that was that's pretty interesting. And set list doesn't have a thing up there, and that's kind of sad. And I wish my memory was better than it is because I'd like to add to it. I do know one of the songs that really stood out to me. I can't tell you what was the opener and what was the final song. One song that really stood out to me was she did "Summertime Blues," and uh, the song "Summertime Blues" to me at that time, I knew the Who's version of it. Okay, and it's all slowed down and kind of heavy, and I thought the way she did it like really up tempo and just knocked it out of the park. It was really, really good. And years later, I don't know how many, but years later, I heard Eddie Cochran's. And Eddie Cochran's is my favorite version of that song that I've heard by anybody. He just killed that song. That was just brilliant. So his is my favorite. Hers is second. And then between The Who and Blue Cheer, those are the other two versions that I know pretty well. They're pretty far back because they're kind of, they make it more like of a grind. And that was one song that really stood out when she did that. Um, and Bad Reputation, I remember her playing that song, and that Summertime Blues kind of had that same energy. Um, yeah, just really good. The radio songs, I Love Rock and Roll and Victim of Circumstance, or I'm sorry, Crimson and Clover. The audience was just fully engaged in that, and they were really engaged all throughout. It was like high energy. Um, the other shows I saw, uh, the stadium or the arena crowd, there's a lot of people, on their feet watching, a lot of people sitting and watching, up front. It was pretty crazy, especially the Van Halen show. They had people moving and grooving quite a bit. But this thing right here, it was a smaller, more intimate venue, as they say, and the crowd was into it, and it was like it was one of the first times I had a feeling like, hey, there's something really going on here, like I want to be in this, I want to be involved. um, she put on a heck of a show, and then, for me, guitars all over the place, okay, and I just love that. And her band had that look, they had that, this isn't, Kansas, this isn't, this isn't Ted Nugent's band or whatever. um, it was, what do I want to say? It was like fresh. It was vibrant. It was just a real good punch right between the eyes. It was a really good show, a lot of energy. And I remember we got there like crazy early. And when we drove up and found out where we were going to park, the the crew was loading on some equipment, and me and my friend, we were talking to them, and we're asking, can we help, and stuff like that. And they were cool to us, but they're like, at some point they're like, you guys got to go, and that was all right. And then when the show was over, we went out, and we immediately went to that, that same area. It was like to the side of the venue. It was like if they came off stage, they would go directly out the side door. And we went over there to see if we could see anybody come off stage. And I think what we determined was, we missed them. Like, they went off stage and they bailed. And the people that were out there, like, they got in a vehicle of some kind, probably, and left before we ever got out there. But the people that were out there was basically the same people we were talking to before the show, and they were loading the equipment. So they're going to be there for, an hour or more loading the equipment. So we were waiting, not knowing that they had left. And I don't know how long it took us to figure out that they were gone. But we were just the buzz of the people, and I remember this girl with purple hair. She was going, like, she was facing away from me. We're all out there in like this little mob, and we're looking to see if anybody's coming out the door to, go. I don't know where they would go at this point, because all there was a big vehicle that you could put equipment into. But anyway, everybody was all buzzing, just buzzing, like, wow, what a great show. And this lady had her back to me, and then she turned around, and then she got like right here, and she told me, don't ever forget this. Don't ever forget this your whole life. Don't forget that you saw this show. I was like, all right, because I dug it, but it was like for her, I guess it was religious or something. I don't know, but it was pretty neat. It was really cool to see that. It wasn't just like a little celebration or anything. So that's it. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, 1982.